So I want to welcome Dr. Kenyata Fletcher.
Hello.
Welcome to Kokoro. Every time when we do this segment, I always make a meal for us to eat. And the meal has something to do with what we're talking about. We're talking about childhood traumas, how they manifest in our lives. So what I did was I ended up making spaghetti with meat sauce. And the reason I did that is because when I was 11 years old, I actually choked on a piece of meat, and after my dad did the Heimlich on me, I had the psychological thing with swallowing for a long time. And so whenever my mom would make spaghetti and meat sauce, I couldn't swallow it, and I didn't have the language to articulate to her what was happening, so she would just force me to sit there and do it. So this actually really does have a negative association with me. Now that being said, I did actually try to make it really, really good for you. So hopefully you won't be like, oh, this is horrible. But this is my negative association. And let's give it a try, and then we'll dive in. Does it sound good?
Okay.
All right, we'll see how it is. Okay.
I think you did a good job.
Is that okay? Tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of what you do. Give us a little background on who you are.
I am currently a therapist and an assistant clinical director for Haymarket Center, which is the largest drug treatment center in Chicago. I have been working in my field for 17 years. I love what I do because I love helping people.
So in the program that you work in, where you are right now with the patients who you see, how many of those patients that you see have that childhood trauma?
So depending on how we define trauma, at least 80% of our clients have some form of trauma. Much of the trauma does come from childhood, and it is physical, sexual, emotional abuse.
What are some ways that you've seen psychological abuse play out in some of your clients?
So psychological abuse is one of the hardest things to deal with because it has long-term lasting effects. There's a certain level of stress that is positive, and then there's negative. So negative stress is high stressed environments all the time, whether it stems from, your economic status or any of that, witnessing violence. But emotional and verbal abuse is one of those things that's hard to let go because it impacts your thinking about yourself and how you feel in terms of life and what others think about you, your self-esteem.
Is there a client that comes to mind with the psychological aspect of abuse that is really that's a person who really got hurt badly, and so now it's manifested down the road in other ways?
I have a client, also female, who dealt with being prostituted out as a child. Her parents sold her for drugs and things like that. And so as she grew up, she had low self-esteem. She was put into the system, the DCFS system. And then she married someone who was also verbally and psychologically abusive, as her parents were as she was growing up. And so with that, she repeated that cycle, and she has still struggled with her self-esteem, with feeling of important in any aspect, but she was trying to figure out why she attracts the same type of people that her parents were to her. And so she wanted to work through that, but it was very hard for her. And so we put her in trauma therapy, we put her in domestic violence therapy, and all of those things, and just working with an individual therapist for just other life things, because now she's a parent. And so she is trying to correct some of the actions or the things that she's experienced, but it's a very day-to-day struggle because she operates in being the victim. With anything that's not working in her way, she goes back to being that little child again of being the victim, and someone's doing her wrong on purpose. And so we were working with her to kind of teach her that not all of these things are on purpose. Some of these things are just the way life happens.
So it's almost like you're trying to give control back to, they've had control taken from them.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're trying to teach them the skills so they can take control back in
Absolutely.
their life. When somebody comes to you and they're struggling, what are some of the things that you do to help them heal?
Well, for me, I would want to know personally, what are they ready to deal with? I would also want to focus in on their strengths of what they are capable of being able to deal with, because everybody is not ready to open up some wounds. And so you always want to practice in your lane of what you are able to handle. And so I want to meet the client where they are at. You want to have them start with the smallest things that they can begin to deal with versus the largest things if that's not something that they're ready to do, just for the sake of reducing the chances of a mental health relapse, is what we call it, or a substance abuse relapse if they are on the road to recovery.
Well, I just want to say thank you for all that you do. Thank you for coming and talking with us today.
No problem.
And thank you for offering your wisdom and being able to serve your community and offering them the resources that they need to try to heal from those wounds from the past. I have a huge amount of respect for you and what you've done, and I just appreciate that you've come on the show and you are with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate you too.